All right, guys, Transatlantic Economy Review Part 1 here. I'm going to do as much of this as I can in 15 to 18 minutes. If not, keep looking. We'll put some more up later. The transatlantic economy can be also known as the triangle trade, the Columbian exchange, and it comes after the age of exploration. And it is where European countries are going to go out and extract resources. Remember the old milkshake example? You're trying to get all the good milkshake at the bottom to become extremely wealthy. And by the heyday of the 1700s, it's going to link Europe, Africa, and the Americas, North and South America, in a vast transatlantic economy. And the wealth is going to be mineral or agricultural, right? So gold, silver, from Mexico and Peru, or things like sugar and rice and cotton, tobacco, and even lumber. And the big part of it is it's all done on the backs of non-free, otherwise known as slave labor. First by Native Americans and later on by African slaves. And Europe is going to go through 4 stages when it comes to this transatlantic economy with the rest of the world. Number 1 is discovery and exploration. We're going to find new worlds. We're going to go out and explore them before they are conquered. Step 2 is the rivalry, all right? Spain, France, and England, all right? The money from this is going to lead to the age of absolutism. We're all rivals trying to get more gold and silver than our neighbors, all right? So if you get 1 territory, I'm going to get 2. If I'm going to get 2, then you're going to try and get 3. Step 3 is European contact with non-Europeans. How European empires are going to be built in Africa and North and South America. We're going to go and set up shop where the necessary raw materials are. And as a result, this will go up through World War II, and when World War II is over, the Europeans will just tap out of the territories that they've controlled and just left them. And as a result, decolonization leads to a lot of third world country status and is a problem to this very day. But countries, Europeans, will base their empires on commerce to increase trade, get materials that they can trade with. And everything is done for the good of the mother country. So they're going to set up governmental enterprises specifically geared to making money. And the idea is to get as much precious metal as possible. Early on, it's gold and silver. So Spain is going to jump out to a lead early because of Cortez's conquest of the Aztecs and Pizarro's conquest of the Incas. The colony's job is to provide raw materials. Raw materials will be extracted from the Americas, all right? And to make sure those materials are extracted as efficiently as possible, the mother country will provide protection. All right, we will keep the natives or the other foreign governments away from you, and we will administrate you. All right, we will be the government. And you are only allowed to trade with the mother country. Spanish colonies can only trade with Spain. British colonies can only trade with Britain. French with French. There was no cross trade, which would make sense since the colonies are right next to each other. They were not allowed to do it so the mother country can maximize the profit. Slaves will eventually come over. Raw materials will be taken and extracted from North America, sent to Europe, and the whole triangle, the Americas, Europe, and Africa, will continue. And Spain is going to get the ball rolling. 20 years after Columbus discovered the Americas, the Caribbean islands, Haiti and Puerto Rico and Cuba, have become staging areas for Spain. They're going to have army, naval ships lined up, men and equipment to go inland to dominate. 1519, the Aztecs fall. Shortly thereafter, 1532, the Incas fall. And these conquests are some of the most dramatic and brutal in the entire world. As I've told you, they're a turning point or a door hinge where there has always been slavery, all right, from the Egyptian pyramids to the Great Wall of China to ancient Rome. But now, these conquests are going to be different. People will be not only enslaved, but this is an entire wiping out of advanced civilizations with a long history. Monumental architectural achievement. Great works of engineering like aqueducts and chimpanas and terraced agriculture. Writing, math, science, and religion are going to be wiped out because they're simply not European. Some of the most brutal and dramatic in all of world history. Another big thing is, this is the Protestant Catholic era of competition. And these new areas open up to the world, to Catholic Spain, new souls that can be converted to Christianity and Catholicism. The Pope, all right, was asked if this was okay, and he knew that it would cost a lot of money, a ton of money, to finance a missionary effort. So he told the Spanish crown, yeah, go ahead, I support you, all right? Go ahead and let the Spanish monarchy do it. We've got to defeat those Protestants. So this gives a religious justification for whatever the Spanish do in the New World. If we got to kill them, well, that's okay, because the Pope said it's good. And missionaries will be sent right before conquest. So if we convert them and they die, it's not a big deal, because they're going to go to heaven. So we're actually doing something good here. And part of conversion was to get rid of the native indigenous practices. The Spanish were especially horrified at the Aztec sacrifice, the bloodletting and the tearing out of the heart to power the god of the sun. So they were horrified at that, but yet we're going to work people to death, so it's okay. But conversion does not bring acceptance. Just because you become a Christian doesn't mean we're on equal Christian ground. I'm Spanish and you're not, so I'm clearly better than you are. And this brings in a missionary, Bartolomé de las Casas. And Bartolomé is a Spanish missionary who writes a book called The Black Legend. It is the real story of what went on up in the New World, right? This is what really was happening. And when it gets back to Spain, people are like, oh my God, that is absolutely horrible. Oh my God, that is completely terrible. Oh my God, I can't believe we are letting that happen. But there's the old saying, when I said, you can't see it from my house. While we feel bad, since I can't really see it, therefore it really just doesn't matter. All right? Because it doesn't personally affect me. The Spanish are making so much money off of this. At first, it's gold and it is silver. All right? Gold and silver. And the Spanish find out, a Spanish chemist comes over and realizes that mercury can greatly speed up the mining and the attraction of precious metals. So the Native Americans are forced to use mercury that the Spanish government has a monopoly on. They not only get 20% of all mining revenue, you had to buy mercury from them. But it's highly poisonous, and it begins to kill off all the Native Americans. But the Spanish are not going to go into the gold and silver mines. They're not going to go into the sugarcane fields. So the Spanish make the natives do it. And here is a look at Spanish territory from the Caribbean to North America down into South America. All this wealth belongs to Spain. And the Spanish come up with 3 different labor practices. The encomienda and the repartimiento are kind of taken from the Incan Mita system. The encomienda allows a certain number of natives to work for a certain period of days for the Spanish crown. So I get to use 100 natives for 3 months, and then I got to get permission to get more. But while I'm writing letters to Spain and back, that takes a long time, so the work isn't consistent. So it's changed to the repartimiento. Here's where the Mita system comes in, where every Native American male is required to work a certain number of days per year for the Spanish crown. So if I get 100 guys for 60 days, I work them 8-10 hours a day for the first 20 days. The second 20 days, I work them 12 to 14 hours, all right? They're broken in, they know what they're doing. The last 60 days or 20 days, I work them 20 hours, and if they die or pass out, I don't care, because I know in a couple more days I'm getting a fresh new batch. And then the third type is the hacienda. It was still hard work, but these mines and mining companies in Spanish, they need to eat. They need farms. You know, cattle farms, horse farms, goat farms, you know, growing, you know, agricultural goods. And so if you worked at a hacienda, you still had to work hard, but it was not as labor intensive as being in a mine, but you could never leave the farm. You never got paid a salary. That's where you worked, kind of like the old company store mentality that I told you about. 2 million slaves are left, all right, within 100 years of conquest. 48 million are killed using exploitive labor. Now that the Spanish have killed all the Native American workers, who's going to do the job? And corregidors will be Spanish nobles who are sent over as favors from the king to administrate this. And a thing known as the House of Trade, the Casa de Contratación, the Spanish Armada, all right, the Spanish galleons, half will be in the New World loading up with their cargo, while the other half of the fleet is in the only port where they could offload their goods in Cadiz. All the gold will be taken to Sevilla, where it will be managed by the crown. They knew how much was coming in. Then, in the spring, the empty fleet would sail across the Atlantic and head back to Mexico and Peru, while the heavily loaded Spanish ships would sail on back to Spain. It was safety in numbers. It becomes known as the flotilla system. Here's a look at the Patesi silver mines. This is a veritable, an enormous mountain made of pretty much silver or silver ore that the Native Americans have to climb down and work in under horrific conditions. The French are going to have the least intrusive experience with the Native Americans. They will go into the St. Lawrence River Valley, and they are looking to not capture territory, but to get expensive animal furs, beaver and sable and fox and bear and rabbit, to keep people warm. They were interested in trade rather than settlement. Their big settlement is Quebec, and they will live pretty much peaceably with Native Americans and have the least intrusive experience. The English are going to have the most complex relations, where the British will play the Native American tribes off of each other. All right, I will instigate a fight between the Shawnee and the Pawnee, and when they're both done fighting, I will attack and take over. Or I will give them things to use as an ally as we begin to fight the French. And the Native American Indians are much more rural than their counterparts in Mexico or South America, lived in urban settings. So They are very susceptible to European diseases, but there's also groups like the Great Iroquois League who will organize each other for defense. Both England and France will use Native Americans in the Great French and Indian or 7 Years' War, in which England will win, giving them dominance in North America. The English come expecting to find gold. Well, they don't find mineral gold. They turn to agricultural wealth, cash crops, sugar cane, but mostly cotton, tobacco, and lumber. Lumber from New England and cotton and tobacco in the American South. And so small cities along the American East Coast will be born to facilitate this trade. Charleston, South Carolina, Norfolk, Virginia, Wilmington, New Hanover, Connecticut, Portsmouth and Plymouth, New Hampshire, and Massachusetts. It's where you go to facilitate that trade. And slavery, black African slavery, will be the final mode of forced labor. When the Native Americans all die, the Portuguese and Spanish, remember, trading with Mali over on the west coast of Africa on their sugar plantations. So they go over and they buy slaves from West Africa and bring them over to do it was economic needs. It was labor practices. And as sugar becomes a hot commodity, we need more slaves to grow more sugar. Slavery did not begin as a result of racist principles. It was to fill an economic need, but slavery will grow as a result. And every society that was touched was affected in the long term. Slavery is an integral part of the triangle trade, as Americas supply the labor-intensive raw materials, lumber, sugar, tobacco, cotton, gold, silver. Europe supplied the manufactured products, and Africa supplies the slave labor. Plantations exist in a rural setting, and I've got to go here quickly, all made to export cash crops, but also, since they were self-sufficient, to grow the food for the owners and the slaves. Large plantations of 100 or more people, like 12 Oaks and Tara, were very, very, very rare. There were very few laws to protect slaves. Life was hard, and the death rate was extremely high. But while the Europeans imported African slaves, Africa did play a role as civilizations on the west coast would go to the interior, capture rival tribesmen, and sell them to the Portuguese. Sorry I have to run, guys, but duty calls. There's review number 1. I'll do the French Revolution here shortly.